They're sub-air here, and they're 15-month-old greens, and so you get these. My drives and everybody's are sticking, right? I mean, they stop where they land. So, I'm hitting at 290 instead of getting the rollout to 310, and I'm hitting 2 extra clubs into greens, but the greens aren't like the fairways. The greens are firm. The greens are really firm, and they're grainy. So you can land a ball into the grain, and a lot of bowed greens. So you can land a ball within 3 paces of each other, and they can end up 40 feet apart. And you have to have unbelievable distance control out here once you're in the fairway in order to get the ball close to these pins. So it's going to be such a challenge to have close birdie putts out here from the looks of it.
I don't know how much more water it can really take in terms of the golf course and the fairways, but the greens are maybe the best Bermuda greens I've ever putted on. I mean, there's spots where it's teetering, on the edge if they get some brutal pins, but it's a great track. I mean, I've enjoyed playing here ever since I played, Wells Fargo my rookie year.
The greens are firm, so it's kind of almost the worst of both worlds. It's playing super long, but the greens are still firm, so it's tough to get the ball close to the hole. So obviously with new greens, with how well they're built, constructed, the bunkers and the greens are just really draining so well. So it's just the fairways that are soft, but it's in great shape. It's kind of like a bit of an Augusta with Bermuda, and is kind of how it feels and how it's playing.
Well, David, soft fairways and firm greens, a recipe for what kind of player?
Well, I think, first of all, a player who hits it in the fairway, always going to favor the guy who hits it further down the fairway and the guy who gets it way in the air. It's kind of the perfect storm for higher scoring and not what the player wants to see. It makes the golf course play right at that true yardage of 7,600 yards. It requires that much more precision going into the greens, and listening to the players, they're recognizing that aggressive lines they may have thought about taking or have been removed. You've got to first get it onto the putting surface, and then from there maybe work it towards the hole to try to get a little bit closer. But you're going to be facing a lot of 20, 30 footers this week. There's just no way to avoid it with the clubs they're going to be hitting into these greens.
By nature of the date that the PGA Championship is played in, it's usually quite hot, and they've got to keep the golf course soft, just keep it alive. Going back to 2000, this has been the most forgiving off of the tee major championship. You could hit fewer fairways and win the PGA, fewer than any other major championship. You could rank worse in fairways than any other major championship and still win the PGA Championship. That speaks to soft greens. In 2016, this golf course, when it was playing much, much shorter, was the hardest golf course on the PGA Tour to hit it close. The greens were softer then, and the golf course was shorter. So now it's longer, and the greens are firmer. So ordinarily, when you listen to the players and they're complaining a little bit about how hard the golf course is, I almost think it's a strategy on their part to get them to set it up a little easier. But I actually believe them this go around. I mean, I think this is going to be the most formidable challenge of all the major championship courses, Frank.
It certainly looks like that. Remember, too, when you're hitting out of wet fairways, the chance of the grooves actually getting moisture inside, so therefore you actually get less spin on the ball. But the general concern, too, amongst the players is actually some of the new greens or new holes. Remember, all these greens were resurfaced. But when you talk about brand new greens, the 11th green, the first green, for example, used to be the old second, but there is a totally brand new hole. That's the old 4th green bottom left there, and that little space of land. Brannell, this become the brand new hole, and you could probably say if a green is going to be hard, it's going to be this new one, or should I say this new hole.
And I believe that Tom Fazio has built the shortest par 3 on this golf course, but perhaps the most controversial hole on this golf course. On the card, it's only 184 yards, and we'll take a look at some of the numbers here. But what's important is from that distance, the average miss for a tour player, the average miss is a little more than 11 yards. So you see that green, you think, well, it's bigger than 11 yards, but in actuality, it's not. It's 173 yards to the front. There's a false front there. You see that with the red dot. This distance right there at the widest part of that green is only 12 yards. An average tee shot by the best players in the world will miss this green. And consider that the wind is going to be coming into and out of the right, so that's going to make it even more challenging. So this green is devilish. It's narrow. It's set right out there in the middle. There's not a lot of trees around it, so it's going to be exposed, and it's going to expose anybody that's not in complete control, because it's going to take an extraordinary shot just to find that putting surface.
All right, for more on this 4th hole, let's go back down to Todd Lewis. Todd?
Here with Tim Rosenford, and Tim, as Brandon was talking about, not a very daunting par 3 on the scorecard, but we are hearing a lot of buzz about this 4th green. Who have you talked to on the ground involved in this championship about this 4th hole?
Heard a lot of it too today, Todd, between players and caddies. Henrik Stenson was walking the range, telling guys I never knew they had elephants in North Carolina, because they certainly buried 2 under that 4th green. Lee Westwood said he had a blank canvas, meaning Tom Fazio had a blank canvas, and he came up with S. And Ernie Els said it's nowhere near what the rest of the course is like, and described it as everything falls away from those bunkers. Now, I did talk to Tom Fazio. This is one of the 3 new holes here at Quail. And basically he's saying he's used to getting reactions to new greens, especially with contour in them. It's a normal tendency for people to have opinions when greens are on the border. He's got distinctive pin placements, but he's going to reserve all judgment and review the hole, obviously, with Johnny Harris, the club president, after the golf tournament's over, to see if they have to make any revisions to the revisions before they come back next year for the Wells Fargo.
Only 184 yards. I'm interested to see what the scoring average is going to be on that hole around number 1 on Thursday, and what players are going to say after. Hey, I want to remind you about something that's going to be special tomorrow on Morning Drive. You know, they'll have barbecue, the Panthers, and NASCAR here in Charlotte, Tim, and that is Kevin. NASCAR. That is Kevin Harvick, a Cup champion, lives in Charlotte, and that is a replica of the 12th hole at Augusta in his backyard. He'll take us to his backyard, show off that hole, and talk about his love for the game of golf. That is tomorrow on Morning Drive. Stay with us as we continue here on Live from the PGA Championship. Jordan praises Rory, Rory praises Jordan. Is this gamesmanship? We'll talk about that coming up.